So this is pretty casual, so feel free to ask me questions to stop me. I'm going to go through and talk about what we do and how we do it. We're a little different. We spent an hour at the food bank this afternoon visiting with Jane. And it's clear that they have a very different model, but that's not unusual. The Oregon Food Bank has been around for 30 plus years. Back in the early 90s, our board and leadership changed our mission to just eliminating hunger, but to eliminating hunger and its root causes. So we were one of the first food banks in the country to start doing public policy advocacy, and along with that, we started adding community food systems work. I've been there 18 years, so I'd say 18 years ago we started adding community food systems work to it. Just to give you a little background for my connection to faith work, I'm a United Methodist, but I'm also on the board of Bread for the World. Have you ever heard of Bread?
Yes.
Okay. I'm in my third term on the board with Bread for the World, so I have a lot of faith connections to this work and strongly believe in it from that perspective. We're going to put these, John's going to put these PowerPoints up and all the resource information on the website for people. So I said Oregon Food Bank's a little different. We're a statewide network versus there's 5 food banks here in Louisiana that do this work. We're statewide, and we cover 37 counties, so the 36 counties of Oregon and Clark County, Washington. Just to give you some idea, the food bank is that big blue star up there, that's Portland, and the furthest one that we go to is over 400 miles away out on the Idaho border. We work with 24 regional warehouses, and we have somewhere between 900 and 1,000 agencies. The number varies from time to time. And we do over 1 million food boxes a year through those agencies. We are very rapidly changing from an organization that does what you would call emergency food boxes, which is sort of standard the way food banking's been done around the country, to, because we are moving so much more fresh food and produce, we're changing to an organization that distributes and works with local agencies to distribute more frequently. Because you can't have a once a month distribution if most of your food is fresh. It's got to move more rapidly. So we're changing our business model. So why do we do this? Like I said, our mission is to end hunger and its root causes because no one should be hungry. And we also sort of have a new byline for us at Oregon Food Bank, which is food today, food tomorrow, and food for all. So we're looking at the bigger picture of food. It's an opportunity to engage communities in a different way. You get a whole different set of folks when you start talking about bigger picture food security. It changes the conversation from those people who need food to we all who need food. And especially in our rural communities, food insecurity is pretty predominant no matter what your income is. Because we have communities where it's easily 100 miles to a supermarket. And in between that 100 miles might be 2 mountain passes and a lot of snow sometimes. We're pretty desolate. And I know there are isolated places in Louisiana and throughout all the states, but we have some significant challenges sometimes. Our community food assessments and the work that we do and the way that we do organizing is about community self-determination and having communities determine a way to have their own roadmap for action. And we always make sure that food insecure people are heard. You know, what happens is, especially in Oregon and some other places, the slow food movement was kind of the first folks who got real involved with community food systems or with local food. But that was not about low-income people getting food. That was about the restaurants having it, or people being able to buy it at a farmer's market, pretty high-end stuff at a farmer's market. And that wasn't about getting food to everybody. So we see it as our role to make sure that everybody's voice is heard in the conversation. It's also that we're looking for upstream long-term solutions to end hunger. We will never food box our way out of hunger. A food box has never ended anybody's hunger. It ends rumbling in their stomach today, but it will not end the problem for them long term. So we are looking for solutions that will have long-term effect. So in our community food systems work, we take 3 approaches. And we're looking for people across sectors. We're looking to empower people to attain personal and community food security. So we're looking for a variety of things. In our community food systems program, we do Feast, which is our organizing events. We do the food assessments, which was what John was engaged in, the grassroots community food assessments. And we'll post some more information about that. Plus, we have a guide to our grassroots assessments. And then we're growing a community food systems network across Oregon, which actually has really come to fruition in the last couple of weeks. Over 50 organizations, community food systems organizations in Oregon have come together to form the Oregon Community Food Systems Network. And they just launched their website and made their public announcement in the last couple of weeks. And that's been a long-term vision of ours, is to bring together, we have this great statewide network of emergency agencies or agencies providing food to low-income people. We really wanted to form a network of organizations working on community food systems, and that's been able to happen because of the support of a couple of really good foundations. One of them is Kaiser, a health foundation, and the other is Meyer Memorial Trust, which came out of the personal fortune of Fred Meyer, which is Meyer Grocery Stores, Fred Meyer Stores. Right, they're now merged with Kroger.
They're in Alaska.
Yeah, they are. Fred Meyers are in Alaska. They sure are. Along with our community food systems programming, we also have an education department that does nutrition education, cooking matters, and a program called Seed to Supper. And Seed to Supper is unique because it's an adult garden education program for people on a budget. And I brought John a couple of the guides.
That's my thing, say I'd love to hear more about that. That's my thing.
So I brought John a couple of our manuals, and we are signing MOUs. All of our stuff is copyrighted. And so we do sign MOUs, and we don't charge we charge for materials because the materials cost us some money, but we don't charge people for the use of our materials. So those things are available to us. Seed to Supper is unique because what we found, we do a lot of work with Extension. And our partner on the Oregon Community Food Systems Network is the Oregon Small Farms and Community Food Systems Center. And our Cooking Matters nutrition education classes are all funded by SNAP education dollars. So we have a tight relationship with our Extension University, and I work with the Applied Anthropology Department on research, and we do a lot with our university.
I asked John about this. She was telling us about the Seed to Supper thing, and that's right up my alley.
He wants to see the guide. I gave you a guide.
Yeah.
Do you want to bring one of those in the annual report in?
Yeah, definitely. Me and Kate
Yeah.
get together on that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, what you
Sure.
gave me today.
What I gave you today,
Oh,
yeah.
That'd be sweet, yeah.
Yeah.
I love hearing this stuff.
So, and we're really looking, our garden program really started as gardens right next to our food bank in Portland.
Right.
And now with the Seed to Supper curriculum, and we use volunteers, we train volunteers to teach that. So we're going across the state, and we have a group of volunteers across the state that are teaching Seed to Supper. The thing we found is Extension across the country has master gardeners. But that's a very specialized, that's a heavy-duty curriculum that's not for everybody.
Right.
And this is about how do you garden on a budget,
Right.
you know?
See, T and I both live in, thank you, man. T lives in the garden district here, and I live more in the downtown Powder, and one of our things that we share, one of our commonalities is in our area, you'll find tremendous amounts of vacant lots or houses
Right.
where there's nothing there anymore. And she and I both were like, just a garden that needs planting. It's just sitting here doing absolutely nothing.
Well, one of the fun things that's come out of the organization that John worked with is shopping cart gardens. Had they started those when you left?
Yeah, it was after, everything
Right.
started after I left.
Right.
You
So
know,
they
typical.
take old shopping carts and line them with the cloth,
Yeah.
like garden cloth,
Right.
and fill them with soil. And they've got them that are growing berries and dwarf trees and all kinds of stuff. The fun part of that is that the ones that roll pretty good, when they have parades, they parade down the street with they take their garden patrol and go down the street in parades. So it's cool.
Hey Sharon.
Yeah.
Is it possible? I know that there's like an MOU or something in with distributing those.
Yes.
But could I still, if folks are interested in this room, could they download a copy of that?
No, it's not. I don't think we have it to download, but I'll double check.
So how do I get?
Maybe, no, you know what? We do have that one to download.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want to pass me a
Yeah.
link? Because we have a Basecamp page.
Sure. I'll give you the
that I
link.
can share with the folks in the room.
Yeah.
Actually, that one we can download. It's Cooking Matters I can't download, so
Oh, yeah.
that one's downloadable.
Seed to supper.
Feed
Okay.
Feed to supper. Yeah. And we get
Send a link and
tremendous.
I'll
In the little town where I live, which was about 4,000 people, we had somebody that started out to be a Seed to Supper instructor. And one of the cool things is she's put to this whole network of young families around Seed to Supper, and they're all raising different things in their backyard and then sharing the responsibility for it. And so they have work parties that go to different people's houses to prepare their gardens and harvest and do all kinds of things. So that's been a really creative thing for us.
I'll do,
Yeah.
you know, that's my job. I love the things.
So, like I said earlier, we've been doing this a while. And I've had some really bright young staff folks that work with me. This is Spencer's creation, our pathways to community-based food systems. Because, we started doing this and we're doing, sort of grassroots stuff, but we really wanted to be able to explain where we're headed with this. And especially for funders, you got to be able to say, where are you going? And what do you hope to accomplish? So we see the different parts of what we're doing. Planning, which is relationship building, figuring out if communities are ready. We've been doing this long enough that we're able to do readiness assessment. And planning for our feast events. And I will tell you that sometimes it's taken us 2 years to plan for a feast event, and sometimes they come together in 3 months.
Or 2 weeks.
Or 2 weeks. Or 2 weeks. John knows this, 2 weeks. Well, we've been working on that for a while.
Don't tell anybody.
The organizing piece is community food assessments. The way we do grassroots community food assessment, it's an organizing tool. It's about involving people and having conversations. We talk to people about opportunities and challenges and barriers, and we talk to them about what they need to make things happen and what do they feel most compelled to work on. And in Feast, that's also the question we ask. It's not, what would you like to have happen, but it's what do you want to work on? Because those are the things we're going to accomplish, is what people want to work on. You can have a whole lot, and that's where the downfall of assessments that are done from the outside, where somebody sits down and does an economic assessment and does maybe an inventory, and they say, oh, this is missing, and so you need to do that. Well, if nobody's compelled or has the energy or is motivated to do whatever it is this person from the outside prescribes, it's not going to happen. So we work on having the community determine what they want to have happen and what they're going to work on. And that's not to say sometimes because there's money, we could say, well, there's this organization that's got money that wants to give us to do this. Is anybody interested in that? Sometimes we can use that as the motivating factor. But, we found that having communities make their own plan is the best way to go forward. So we try very hard not to go in with agenda other than to improve a community's food system. And I'll talk more about that. Action planning is another piece of our organizing. So when we're doing feasts, we actually have an action plan segment of feast, and people walk away from that event at the end of the day with an action plan. Groups do for what they're going to do. Development is the implementation of our action plans. Strategic planning, we actually have a strategic planning process that takes 4 hours. You know, we found out communities didn't have time to spend weeks and months on strategic planning. And we had to find a way, and these were communities that have started their work, and they're a year or two down the road, and now they're saying, well, we want to figure out what we're going to do over the next 5 years. But they didn't want to spend forever doing that. So we developed a process, a shorter process for doing that, shortcut process. We do project development. We actually now have funding from some organizations to provide to some of our communities. And then we talk to people about a long-term vision and working towards economic development and sustainability. When I first started doing Feast, I would never see an economic development person in the room. Now there's always economic development people in the room. Because, you know, it's been the idea that small food kinds of things, unless it was around agritourism, was not, they didn't really want to talk about it. And now they're really seeing that as a viable way of improving communities and building economically. And some of them have some significant employees now involved with them. And then we like to talk to people, we work on sustainability. How are we going to keep this going? So
is this specifically for food banks or partner agencies or distribution points?
Oh no, we almost never work with food banks on this. And as I said, the people around the country that have hired me are not food banks. I worked for the Hawaii Department of Health. I worked for the city of Seattle. I went and did this training, 2 days of training for Michigan State University Extension, because statewide they have community food systems agents. And we're now developing community food systems agents. So I've only done this training once for a food bank, and the rest of the time it's been, and the people who come are not food bankers. It's a third of the people who come to our events are producers. Either producers or processors of some sort. And then we have a pretty widespread, I have physicians that have come to these sessions. In fact, I get a lot of physicians now at these sessions. We also, you know, well, I've got a slide in a minute, maybe, if I put it in here. I was shortcutting some of this. So we developed as a response to help communities move to action around community food systems. They're organized by a local leadership team. We're there to coach, but we don't develop it. And we have a guide for that, and that guide will be available on the website. Tomorrow, we'll actually go through that guide page by page. And like I said, it's a conversation that leads to a self-determined action plan for food systems work in the community. The other thing I was telling John earlier is I just got a call from a community that their homeless shelter is closing, and they've been through the feast process, and their question was, will you please come and do this with us around homelessness? So can we use the model? And the answer is yes, of course we can. Right now, mostly OFB staff are facilitators, but like I said, that's in the state of Oregon. I've trained people in lots of places now. Kansas State University is another extension university that's adapted this. We've been a partner in their rural grocery work. And they just hired a coordinator at their community development center to do nothing but help communities do feast. So they've been sort of working on it for a few years, but now they've decided to really go full tilt and to use feast in their community. So Kansas and Nebraska, I think, are the two places. And I'm in conversation with people at University of Missouri Extension. So as I said, food, education, agriculture, solutions together. That's a picture from one of our, these are all pictures either from our events or from gardens. So 100 plus events. We've gauged over 3,000 people in the state of Oregon. We have had people coming from all of these different sectors. I'm not going to read them all off to you. About 30% plus of our participants are producers. We've had some pretty intense evaluation, because one of the things we wanted to know was if we were increasing people's networking, their connecting pieces. And so we did a network analysis, and we found significant increase, even in very tiny communities, the kind of communities where people say, oh, we already know everybody. We would see connections increase by a third to a half. And then we were recognized by Feeding America. So what makes this different, and the methods that we use different? Community self-determination. It's structured for creativity. It's very adaptable and flexible, and our facilitators flow with the day and with the group they're working with. One of the things that I think has made us very successful statewide and has actually built into the success of community food systems work statewide is we define and use common language. So when we're going and talking to economic development people, or we're talking to writing a proposal or whatever it is, everybody's using the same language, and they go, oh yeah, we know that because. And so it's been successful. And we had one foundation that put $3 million into a 3-year initiative based on the work we'd done. But that was a few years ago. The other thing about Feast is we highlight the local knowledge base. So for the most part in Feast, it begins with a local panel. And I do very little, or the facilitator does very little talking. We're just there to frame the event. And the biggest thing that we do that we're actually talking at people with is that common language. But beyond that, it's really about local. Because I firmly believe that people don't know what they know, and they haven't told each other what they know. People live with tangible next steps, so they leave with an action plan. So that's to tell you about, you have any other questions that's about our programming. Do you have questions about that? And then I'm going to start talking about the community organizing piece. And John, tell me when you want to eat dinner, because I'm not going to have track of time here.
Okay, yeah, I will.
Or you guys tell John when we want to eat dinner. Because my timing is completely off by 2 hours.
Here.
Okay,
Just try to hold off.
I was going to ask you a question.
sure.
How do you work with the faith-based community?
So we have a lot of churches that are involved in this. Like I said, I'm United Methodist, so the United Methodists actually for several years had an initiative on hunger and community food systems. So we had a lot of our churches we've built orchards and community gardens and all sorts of things. So we can either go in, what I've done is I've done 2 ways we've done it. We get the community, the church congregations to get involved in a community feast that's going on, or I've also had congregations say to me, we just want to do it for us. And so I would go in and work with a congregation and do a feast, and they would do their own food systems plan for what they were going to do, both within their congregation and to outreach to the community around them.
Now, so do you engage with the food banks to set up pantries at different churches? Or how did y'all, if y'all had a food pantry at y'all church, did y'all engage with the food bank, or y'all had other resources that supplied you with food?
Mostly if we're working with a food pantry that's setting up, then they're going to become part of the food banking system. Very little of this is about setting up food pantries. We're really trying to do things like the kind of programs that have come out of this are new farmers markets, SNAP incentive programs, Veggie RX programs, new gardens. I have one community that set up IDAs, individual development accounts, for people who were doing food systems. So we had a farmer who bought a tractor. This is actually Clatsop and Tillamook County now. They get their money matched 3 to 1. So you put in, for every dollar you put in, you get matched $3, and you set a goal at the beginning of how much money you want. You go to some to some financial planning classes, and small business classes as part of that. So, like I said, there's one person who they ended up with, I think, $3,000 or $4,000 for a tractor. Somebody who set up a pasta business, had a kid as young as 12 who wanted to set up a farmer's market business, and so they wanted a very small amount of money, like $300, but they saved the right amount and then got their match and started producing in their backyard for a farmer's market. There's been all sorts of things that have happened out of that particular. They've got a lot of participants now in that. Hoop house production, youth garden kind of things. Over in Eastern Oregon, where things are so tenuous, we've actually done a lot of work around improving and supporting rural grocery stores through this kind of process. We had a rural grocery store that had been in business for 110 years, was ready to close its doors. They couldn't find a buyer. They were in a 150-year-old building. And we did this process with the community. And actually that involved a couple of churches. And one of the churches decided to pay the heating bill for the winter so that they could keep the store open. And then the community came together to staff the store so they could keep it open. And eventually they found a buyer and they've saved their local store. So there's all kinds of creative things that can happen out of this.
Let me ask you a question though. You were talking about the rural grocery store that they were able to keep up and running. Would the same concept and some of the same models that was used to do this help parts of the city that are indeed food deserts?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's almost like voodoo economics, but I mean, the extreme rural is almost a similar
I'm going to
problem
say
some
the
of
word
people-
John said I shouldn't say.
You guys, yeah. Just,
I'm going to say it just because
this is going on videotape, so you have to be
okay,
careful.
all right. So, community-owned grocery stores,
Right.
You can say the word.
co-ops,
Oh,
yeah. Well,
Right.
John said I shouldn't say that.
You sound
But,
like a northern communist hippie.
no, see, I love it. No, I'm with you.
I mean, that's really becoming, in Portland, that's how they've solved some of the food desert areas is through community-owned grocery stores.
Right. I mean, there is, well, I mean, it's not a grocery store, but it's very similar to what Eaton's model is right now, and what Eric is doing over at Eaton right now.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of
And-
talk about
Right.
the need for that.
Right.
And-
Because we are dead center in the food desert where we are.
There's a community-owned grocery store in, I think it's like on the Colorado-Kansas border, that they set up as I want to say they set up as an S corp, but they've got all these local the local investors that invested in it. That store's doing over $1 million a year in business.
Because.
And it has 14
There's a
employees.
USDA food desert map, you know. We're just
Right in the middle of one.
dead center, yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know, the thing is about grocery stores, you know, I've tracked a little bit, but the thing about grocery stores is, and rural and even the urban food desert stores, they want to have a certain amount of demand before the wholesaler will sell to you. And a lot of our rural grocery stores, because they're in very isolated areas, their buying population is small. So they're paying the highest wholesale price plus a fuel surcharge.
Right.
The last time I talked to a rural grocery, it was 17% fuel surcharge to get groceries to them if they have them delivered. So what they're doing instead is driving to the nearest urban center, which might be Bend or Portland, and go into the low-cost grocery store, which in our area is called Winco, and they purchase, that's where they get all their canned goods and their non-perishables and stuff. And then they may or may not have perishables. Now they can get soda pop and cigarettes and fuel delivered,
Right.
but they can't get milk and milk, eggs, and bread delivered.
No, I'm with you, man.
You know,
I'm with you.
and we passed a new home baking bill so people could sell from their home, like your cottage food laws, just so people could have bread.
That's what my wife
Because,
does,
yeah, we couldn't have bread we've have whole areas that all of the small bakeries were purchased by one corporate bakery, and they don't deliver to rural stores anymore. So, yeah. So that's the kind of research, and that's the sort of thing that comes out of these discussions. The other thing is because we're out talking to people, we're finding out what's going on in all of these communities. And then we can bring that together and run the threads, and we can go back to legislators or even to, because the food bank has a relationship with so many corporate food entities, we can go back to them and say, wait, this is what we found. And what is it that you can do to make this better? So, yeah.
In like a urban co-op, does like in the urban areas, does the grocery store have to be so far away before you can set up like a community grocery store? How does that work?
There's no rules about that.
There's no rules?
No.
Okay.
Unless there's something in this state, and I doubt that there are. No. You got to look at the business model. There's a lot, now that over the last 10 to 15 years, there's a lot of community-owned grocery stores that have come in. And you have to look at your business model and make sure you're going to have a big enough customer base to be successful and warrant your investment. But it's not nearly as difficult as, it's not easy, but it's also not difficult. And you guys have CLETA here to help you do that kind of thing. So. Yeah. The other thing is going in and talking to somebody who owns a small grocery store that already exists, and they're having challenges with inventory and things like that, and saying, how can we partner with you to make your store work? You know?
If you drive around the neighborhoods in Lower Third, there are these little community grocery stores that are, they've been, abandoned for years, but there were tons of these little community places where people could walk to them.
Yeah. Yeah, I had a cousin that ran one in Greensboro, North Carolina. I think that's, and then, you could go into those stores and you could buy, there was a meat counter sometimes, at least lunch meat.
It was
a small deli counter and all that kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
These people called Kelly Grocery right on Main Street.
Yeah, and a lot of them are succeeding because northern Idaho is another one of those places where it's just off the chart, man. And a lot of those there's a restaurant, because there's no restaurants, so there's a restaurant and they've put in a little grocery store. And so now, they can, because they've combined their efforts of ordering all that stuff, they actually have been able to do better and get a wholesaler to deliver to them. And so they've rethought how they do it. The other thing is thinking about, bulk foods. And that's about rethinking. And the other thing we found that's really helpful with the rural grocery stores is just helping the people who live around them understand why that grocer has so much trouble.
Right.
Because without any thought, they'll get in the store and drive the 100 miles to the Walmart.
Right.
And not think about the fact that because they're driving to that Walmart, 2 weeks from now, that grocer may no longer be able to get milk because not enough people are driving buying milk there. So, and they think, well, it was expensive. Well, yeah, but it was expensive to make that drive and take all that time. And, there's a community that I work in that's down in the far southeast corner of Oregon, and it's 65 miles to a grocery store. But that's a community that's 110, they're at 4,600 feet. So it's 110 degrees at noon in August, and it freezes at night. So it's not a place you can raise your own food very easily. You're not going to garden and have very much food because it can freeze on the 4th of July. But think about trying to drive to the grocery store with 3 little kids and get your groceries home without having them spoil. So you need to be able to get perishables in your own community. That's a community that doesn't have, I was just talking to a reporter this morning about this, doesn't have a federal school lunch program. So there's 100 kids down there who, and like 70% would be free and reduced and have no access to food.